That's some really rockin' intro music.
Yeah, right.
Like,
well, if you didn't have enough caffeine this morning, we got the music.
It reminds me of like the AC/DC, like back to Starbucks ads very close. I don't think we license AC/DC, so we use something else.
Well, we should have talked about that ahead of time.
We should have pre-talked about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, good morning. Thanks for being here. I hope everyone's as caffeinated as the both of us are. I'm Mark Wilson, Global Design Editor at Fast Company, and I'm obviously here with Brian Niccol, the CEO and Chairman of Starbucks. And no matter what your feelings are about Starbucks, I think in your heart of hearts, and certainly in my heart of hearts, there was a time that Starbucks was the best. And I don't know that we're going to agree on what that year was, but whatever it was, Brian wants to bring you back to it, right? And I think that's really the core of his Back to Starbucks plan, his Back to Starbucks strategy. You know, since taking over the position last year, he is leading a design-led turnaround for Starbucks, reskinning stores, bringing back seats, rethinking sort of back-of-house service. But I do have one little confession, which was when Brian and I met for this story. You see the cover story; it's floating around here. I said, Brian, I'll admit, when you took the position, I wasn't sure you were the guy for the job. Which is always the best way to start a chat, right?
Yeah, sure.
But that's because he had his bona fides were really the top guy in the restaurant industry, right? He came from Taco Bell, where he taught us all to live Mas, right? He launched an app there. He turned that company around. He went to Chipotle, which is a very different company. And this is like Chipotle is very analog driven, and he installed screens, a line for making burritos, and brought them new efficiency, brought them an app, upgraded their app significantly, and turned Chipotle around. And what I said was, Brian, well, here's the thing. Starbucks has the best app already.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I think what we really got into quickly was that Starbucks, to have a design turnaround, really need to rethink the entire infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right. And first of all, great to be here with everybody. Good to be with you again. Look, the Starbucks strategy of Back to Starbucks is all about ultimately getting to the place of being the best of Starbucks again. And if you think about what makes, I think, Starbucks special is how you feel when you're in a Starbucks. When it's truly a community coffee house, it truly is the third place. I think it is our point of difference, and it's why people fell in love with Starbucks. It's why I fell in love with Starbucks, 20 years ago, when we had the first Starbucks come to the little town I was in just outside of Cincinnati. And, I think there's no reason why we can't have that today. I actually think people want it more than ever. I know digital and AI and the ability to connect and get bits of information in all forms or fashion are like faster and easier than ever before. But I think nothing beats the good old-fashioned sit down with a friend, sit down with a family member, sit down for a job interview, face-to-face, over a cup of coffee. It never can be replaced. And so I think when we do it right, there's nobody better. And I firmly believe the best days of Starbucks are still in front of us. And I've had the opportunity to travel around the world and experience our coffee and the community coffee house around the world. And it transcends cultures, it transcends borders. It really is, I think the best of humanity when you get people together around a table in a safe place over a cup of coffee where you can, I really do believe it's important to get these ceramic mugs back too, because there is something to this like mug hug when you get your warm cup of coffee. And, we want all those little moments to be back again. And I think we talked about this, we're designing a new mug, we're designing a new seat, we're doing these coffee house uplifts. Because I do believe the customer experience, the aesthetic of that community coffee house is really important.
I mean, it seems like in an age when everything is basically digital and convenience dominates, that it's no longer a distinguishing feature for your brand.
I think all those things are just category antes, right? Look, we got to have access through the app. We got to be quick. We got to be convenient. We need to have drive-throughs. I think the thing that separates us is that coffee house moment. And whether you're walking into a coffee house to just grab your cup and go, I think it's important that you walk into a coffee house. You know, I mean, we've all been in those places where we've gotten to-go food, and if you walk into a place and it's empty and soulless, you don't feel great about that to-go order. If the place has a soul, a connection, even if it's a to-go order, you feel much better about that to-go order. And I think the same is true for Starbucks.
I mean, that's part of the business argument here, right?
Absolutely.
That basically upgrading the physical space will actually increase digital orders and sort of other things along those lines.
Absolutely. And look, the other thing too is there was a lot of feedback from our partners on what it took to run the Starbucks, because now you have 3 key access points, right? You got the drive-through, mobile order pickup, and now you have the cafe, or the counter experience for the cafe. And you know, we've worked on technology and process and flow and staffing to ensure that our teams are set up where they can do all 3 of those access points successfully. And some of the feedback I was getting initially is they're not set up for success. And so you might have heard us talk about this green apron service model that we just started to roll out. You know, we're investing $500, $600 million into additional labor into the stores, but it's purposeful. It's purposeful to make sure that every transaction is more than a transaction. It's actually a moment of connection, both at the time you order and at the time you hand it off. And we say it starts and ends with the green apron partner, because the great orders start with a barista experience, and they also end with a barista experience. So whether that's a mobile order coming in and you know, we hand the coffee to you, or if you're going through the drive-through, I mean, some of the best experiences I've had, just before I was flying out here to New York, I swung by one of our stores to go through the drive-through. The woman was terrific, like, you know, super engaging at the order board, and then really engaging when she handed me my coffee on my way out. She might have been a little bit surprised it was me, but nonetheless, she was terrific.
I imagine like the most frightening and exciting customer they could have. Right?
I don't know why. I actually think I'm a good customer. So,
I want to rewind a bit, which
Sure.
is, you know, you start last year, you come into the role, and you know, tell me what drove you crazy.
Yeah, so, well, there were a few things that drove me crazy, which was so I had left Chipotle and I had about a month and a half before I was starting at Starbucks. And the thing I did was I started going to Starbucks with a lot more frequency because I was kind of between jobs, and I heard that's kind of one of the things you do is you go hang out at Starbucks.
Yeah. Write your novel.
Exactly, right. Write a novel, yeah. But you know, when I went, what I quickly realized is we had done some things that basically did not deliver on having a great in-cafe experience. You know, I walked into a store, outlets were covered or outlets weren't working. You know, there weren't enough seats. It was clear that we had prioritized a waiting area for mobile order over solving how do we better sync up the timing of when you order your drink and when you show up for your drink so that you don't need as big of a waiting area and we can put those seats back in. You know, I also saw it was very transactional as opposed to giving our baristas or our partners the time to create connection and also do their craft correctly consistently. And so when I started to see these things, and it was really interesting, there was one customer, he happened to be in front of me, and you know, he didn't realize I was the CEO. A lot of people at this time didn't know I was the CEO. And you know, he ordered a brewed cup of coffee from our Clover Vertica machine, and our barista turns around, makes the brewed cup of coffee, and then sends it down the line behind lattes and everything else. And the gentleman's literally getting anxious. You can tell he just wants his cup of coffee, like right now. You know, just hand it back to me. He's good to go. And instead, we were sending it down the line, and you know, so I just asked him. I was like, "Hey, does this happen to you all the time?" He's like, "All the time."
Yeah.
He goes, "And you know, what would be really helpful?" He's like, "I can put my own milk in my coffee." And you might have heard.
Days.
What's that?
Like the good old days.
Like the good old days. And you know, what I found out was we had removed the condiment bar during COVID, and we had never put it back. And we had also changed the process of brewed coffee to go down the line as opposed to just hand it back to you at POS and allow you.
It went down the line because the barista was the one to pour in the oat milk or
That's right.
whatever milk.
Sugars.
Yeah.
And inevitably, people are very, you know, your coffee is very personal. So to tell somebody how much milk to put in or how much sugar to put in, it's very hard to get it correct when the person doesn't see what's going on. So we also had a scenario where we're redoing these coffees a lot. Or worse yet, I saw somebody hand somebody their cup of coffee, a cup with some milk, and then a cup full of sugars. And then this person's got now 3 cups, and is looking like, well, where am I supposed to go with this? Because we don't have the seat for him to sit down to go put the cream and sugar into his coffee. So, those were little things where I'm like, gosh, this is really frustrating, and there's no reason for it to happen. And it made it hard on our partner, it made it hard on our customer, and these were simple things to solve. And hopefully you've seen that already go into effect, where now we have the condiment bars back. When you do order brewed coffee, they should hand it to you right at the order point.
Let me pause you here, though, because on paper, it's simple enough to put the milk back on the condiment bar. On the back end, though, you stop charging more for different milks, right?
Correct.
Alternate dairy milks or whatever.
Right.
And that's a relatively big decision, but you made it pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, that was another thing that I was hearing from customers. And I guess probably the point, to go back to your question, when I first started, I always take the approach of what are customers saying, what are our partners saying, what's working, what's getting in the way, and then it's a really easy list to create to say like, okay, if we just fix these things to eliminate these pain points for both our customers and our partners, I think we're going to make a lot of progress. And one of the pain points was why is it regular milk there's no upcharge, but there's an upcharge when I want oat milk. And I was kind of listening to it. I'm like, I think they're right. As a customer, that would not delight me. So we made the decision to stop charging for alt milk. And with doing that, that also freed us up to then have the right milks on the condiment bar. Because what I found out was one of the weird little barriers was, well, we wanted to charge for the alt milk, so we didn't want to put it on the condiment bar.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the hacks where people get the espresso, pick up the oat milk, dump half the container, kind of screw everybody, but also save $1.
Yeah, well, and what's so interesting is you see these compensating behaviors and you're like, this is really silly. We can make it very simple, and the simplicity actually works for everybody. And so, we made that decision, we put the condiment bars back in. I mean, the one thing I had to get comfortable with at Starbucks is, and if my team was here, I'm kind of a broken record of I want to do it faster. Why can't we do it faster? And, but I found that in my time at Chipotle, I found that in my time at Taco. I've always, I guess, been a little bit impatient, especially when you get clear feedback of what you need to go do. And, but the scale of Starbucks resulted in we had to track down, hundreds of thousands of these carafes. And, that took a little bit of time. So I couldn't get it done.
They were gone. I wonder where the carafes went.
I don't know.
There's a good documentary in that.
I'm guessing people's closets are full of carafes. I don't know.
You're changing store design quite a bit, right? So there were all sorts of store designs before. Moving forward, there will be sort of 3 core store designs. I would say small, medium, and large. That's probably the wrong framing.
Yeah, I was corrected. It would be, tall, grande, and venti.
Yeah. And the tall in particular is going to be a new format store we haven't really seen before, and it's modeled after a classic espresso bar.
Yeah. So the idea is in a small format, you can still have a great barista connection and still have a couple seats. We've seen you've all experienced these places, right? As you've traveled around the world. The traditional espresso bar is actually though just a walk up to the bar, get a shot of espresso, maybe have a few words, and out you go. I do believe we still need to have some atmosphere where if you want to sit down and have your drink, you can still have a seat. So there'll be small formats, primarily driven towards the idea of hey, I want to get my coffee, maybe just have a minute or two with the barista and then move on, or a minute or two with others that are in the store, but also provide 6 to 8 seats where if you want to sit down, you can sit down. And then obviously when you go to the medium or the grande size store, you're going to have probably 30 seats, and then as it gets bigger, you can get to 50, 60 seats, and in some cases even bigger. You might have seen, there was getting some news, we just opened a flagship store in Spain at the Bernabeu in Madrid, and that is the 3rd place on steroids.
I mean, you have a complete view of the pitch for the Real Madrid soccer team. It's
amazing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. I think Fast Company says the most beautiful Starbucks in the world right now.
Wasn't my article. I prefer the one in Chicago. That's in Chicago.
You know what? The one in Chicago is beautiful too. And so the thing, my point is, it can be beautiful when they're big and multi-storied, or they can be beautiful and intimate when it's 800 square feet with 10 seats. We do not have to make a trade-off.
But you keep saying seats, and you're adding 30,000 seats back.
I think, you know what, I think it's going to be closer to hundreds of thousands of seats back in. Because what's happened over time is, some stores might have had initially 70 seats, and today they only have 30. We're going to put the seating density back in. So ideally, that store will go back. I don't know if we can get all the way back to 70, but you should be able to get back to maybe 60. So we're going to be putting back in hundreds of thousands of seats. And I think it's going to really accentuate the point of difference of Starbucks.
I mean, it is true. Like, we've basically seen every major restaurant chain rip out seats over the last 5 years. I wrote an essay a few years ago called Death of a Place to Sit. And we've seen it basically everywhere. I mean, do you think this is going to lead the industry in sort of a resurgence of seating? Do you think people sort of draft off of Starbucks like they did Starbucks' rewards app years ago?
Yeah, look, I hope so, because I do think the more people can actually connect face to face and kind of share those moments with each other. I hate to reference ads, but there was a great ad that Starbucks did a couple years ago where they literally went around the world in 24 hours and just showed people connecting over coffee. And it's powerful. And you know what? I think you're seeing it even with like the resurgence of casual dining, right? I mean, a good friend of mine, Kevin Hochman, runs Chili's and Brinker, and I think he's doing a great job. Because he's bringing back that moment where you can get together, and in their case, it's over a burger. But it's like, I think people want a place to be able to spend time with each other over food or over coffee. And, when I was at Chipotle, there was a moment there where we was like, oh, you don't need that front of house anymore. You can just do everything through the digital make line. And at the time, I felt like I was a little bit out on the island, but I was like, I disagree. I think people like to come into the store, interact with, in that case, going down the line to get your customized experience. And the same thing's true at Starbucks. I hear over and over and over again, the connection between the barista and our customers is unlike anything I've heard. And there are these examples where people walk in and the barista knows them so well that they've already made their drink before they've gotten to the POS. And I wish every single one of our transactions was that intimate, that personal. That's what we need to get to.
I mean, you bring up Chili's, which I think is a really interesting company. Applebee's is somewhat similar in this space where they are finding market share because they have these $13-ish meals that aren't really more expensive necessarily than McDonald's has gotten to, but offers a little more atmosphere, perhaps higher integrity ingredients, and you can go somewhere, right, and hang out. But I am wondering, a lot of this is taking a lot of investment. You're going to staff up. These store remodels cost about $150,000 a piece, right? Or sorry, uplifts. The remodels cost a little bit more. But are you worried with sort of a pinched middle class, where we're seeing credit card debts rising? The economy's obviously shaky. We have global instability. That all of these improvements, I do believe could move the needle significantly for Starbucks. But if you have all of these challenges around a $6 or $7 coffee, does that offset your gains?
I don't think so. I think when you have a commitment to craft and quality like we do, and then you have a commitment to what I would call a great customer experience. Like, I would love for Starbucks to become the world's greatest customer service company. Like right now, when I ask people, name me a great customer service company, I usually get a blank stare. And which I find fascinating, because I'm like, well, geez, that tells me right off the bat there's a huge opportunity to be the defining customer service company. And I think there is tremendous value in being a world-class customer service company combined with great craft, great quality, food and drink. And I think when you look at putting those two things together for the price that we will have to charge for it, I think it'll turn out to be invaluable.
Comes back to experience.
Comes back to experience, yeah. And I think you might have even had it in the article. It's kind of interesting to have the simple idea of putting hospitality back into the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
It seems like...
That was my line.
It was your line,
It's
right?
yours now.
Yeah. Well, I might use it again. But it really is, and look, one of the things I've tried to do coming into Starbucks is keep it very simple and straightforward on what we need to go do in order to get this company turned around. And we're already starting to see elements of that show up across the organization. Our partners are really engaged. Our customers are giving us positive feedback. And I think, we're on our way to being that world-class customer service, customer experience company again.
I'm still seeing reports that the customer experience, to provide that, baristas are taxed a little extra. And I know you're staffing up. I know that you are sort of simplifying the menu. You're doing all sorts of things to sort of help them out, to buy them time. But they're still writing, with Sharpies on cups again. They are still slammed. When do you feel like you'll see a broad relief for that group, right? Because just one more thing, what stopped me from going to Starbucks for a while was I just felt like I was abusing the workers a little bit, right? Like I just saw them working really hard, and it's tough to enjoy this little luxury when you see somebody just working so hard for it.
Yeah, look, our goal is to create a situation where our partners can thrive, right? And so I do think we have to accept what the standards need to be, though. And so, our standard is going to be great customer service and great craft. And I don't believe we can lower the standard. I think what we need to do is make sure we create process, programs, investment, so that the standard is achievable. And the other thing too, and I've said this to our organization, I was like, here's the fact: the standard's going to go up, like every year.
So you're saying the Sharpies are hard today?
What happens is over time, the Sharpie becomes just, this is what I do.
That's the baseline.
That's the baseline, and it's partly a new thing right now.
Yeah.
So therefore, as with anything, any little bit of change, sometimes there is a change curve. And I think the mistake sometimes is we read into the change curve as like, ooh, we need to lower the standard. And I actually think, no, we need to provide the support to get through the change curve. And then give people the ability to hit the standard. Because here's what I'll tell you is, when people hit the standard and they get that great customer experience, unbelievably proud of what they just provided. And so that's what we need to get to.
The feedback comes from the customer.
Ultimately, the feedback will come from the customer. We as the corporation need to make sure we're setting our teams up for success so they have every right to hit the standard. And then I think, the satisfaction comes with providing a great experience, a great craft, or a great craft of coffee. Look, when I was just at Starbucks yesterday, and I ordered this was last week. I was in Arkansas, and I ordered a dry cappuccino. And I get to the counter, the woman hands it to me, and she's like, "You feel how light that is?" And I'm like, and she's
like,
right.
Boom.
And she's right, because when a great cappuccino is actually very light. And she knew it, and she knew she had a great one, and she handed it to me, and it was a little bit like that, here you go, bud. Right, like
she dropped it.
You enjoy that cappuccino, order it again, right? So I think there is something about hitting those standards, and it gives you pride in what you do, and then the feedback comes from your customer.
You mentioned a new chair.
Yes.
And new cups. These are sort of pet projects that you've had. I don't know if anybody remembers, but Starbucks used to have this, iconic is a word for it, purple chair that was very Tim Burton-esque, I would say, in some of the stores. And when you came on, you were like, we're bringing back the chair.
Yeah, so we're gonna have, the idea is, look, when you walk into, I think, these places that are personal to you, there's always a seat that you're like, that's my seat. Right, and even if somebody's sitting in it for the moment, you keep an eye on it, right?
There are too many people laughing in this room.
What's that?
There are too many people laughing in this room.
Well, because it's all real.
Yeah.
People laugh at things that they're like, oh shit, I do that. And the reality is that purple chair was one of those seats in our stores where it was like, you know what? Once that seat's available, I'm going to grab it. And you would also see like young kids. It was amazing to me, but 6 kids would be using that one chair, right? And so we're going to come out with, I think, our contemporary version of that signature chair. It probably won't be in every single Starbucks, but it will be in a lot of them. And then I also think there's an opportunity to, differentiate ourselves with a special mug. So when you choose to stay in our cafe, you get a ceramic coffee mug that aesthetically says, hold me, stay with me, right? And ideally, people will be wanting them personally. Hopefully maybe they'll even want to buy them for their own use at home.
I was going to ask, is that something I could buy, or is it something I could only drink out of at a Starbucks? Because that also.
Well, so there's a debate.
Can I buy the chair?
There's a debate, and look, my preference is why not? Why not let people? If you love the chair and you want to buy it, we should probably do something with Pottery Barn or Williams Sonoma or whoever Restoration Art, where they can turn around and resell this chair for us. We're not going to be in the chair selling business. We'll leave that
That's
to
not
the
the
experts.
headline?
No,
Starbucks.
yeah, we're not
Chairs.
Exactly. No, coffee. And so there's a debate though. Like some folks are like, oh, we should only have the mugs in the store, and I'm like, well, look, if you enjoy it in the store, why not let people purchase them to enjoy it at home? I think the more you're exposed to our brand, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of your decision making, at least in our conversations, tends to come through as, not to oversimplify it, but common sense.
Well, look, I think sometimes we overdo it and we walk past common sense. And I say this to our team all the time. I'm like, well, why are we doing this? I'm like, because it's common sense. I don't need a study. I don't need more analytics. This is obvious, right? So therefore, we're going to do it. And we're going to do it with urgency, and we're going to do it in a way that our customers tell us, hey, that was right, and our partners tell us, I could execute it. And so I think sometimes we like to make simple things sound super complicated, and I'm like, you know what? I don't have time for the complication. We need to be moving at the speed that our customers are moving, and when you see common sense solutions, you just got to act on it.
So we have only a few minutes left, and now we are at the point of Mark has questions about Starbucks as a Starbucks customer. So we're going to get through a few of these as quick as we can. Look, what's up with matcha? I'm hearing...
It's going way up.
Yeah, matcha's going way up. But my understanding is there's not a lot of matcha in the world.
It's funny you bring this up. We were just talking about this. The popularity of matcha has put a little strain on the supply globally.
I mean, it's bothering me because I liked matcha before it was cool, but that's a
we're going to figure out how not to run out of it, that's for sure. But yeah, matcha is having a moment. And look, the reason is it's really good, right? It's like, I personally, now, one of my afternoon drinks is a cold matcha latte. And I think also it tastes really good when you put one of our cold foams on it.
One note, one of my afternoon drinks. I just want to make sure everybody caught that really, really interesting phrasing. But when you say we're going to make sure we don't run out of it, I mean, does that mean you are essentially going to have to partner with matcha farmers like you've done with
coffee?
With coffee?
Look, the reality is a lot of people don't realize this, but Starbucks has an unbelievable history in tea as well as coffee. And the good news is we've got strong relationships on the tea side of things. And so, not surprising, very similar to approach with coffee farmers is the same thing we're doing with tea farmers.
The Chinese chain Luckin is really growing quickly. They have a very opposite model, very Uber-based transactional. Is there anything you admire from what they're doing?
Look, I think there's always something you can learn. And they've done a nice job with, I would say, some of their flavor work. I think they've done an interesting job on how they've turned the app into the only way you can interact with that business. It's a different approach. I don't think it's the right approach for us. It's definitely having an impact in China. But I will tell you, our Starbucks business, I think, is having a nice recovery in China as well, by us getting back to making sure that we've got the right product innovation and also the right customer experience. And I think that's the one thing that they've probably done a nice job of, is just a unbelievable pace of product innovation. And so I think it kind of sets the tone for hey, we cannot be complacent on flavors and drink combinations. And I will tell you, our China business, if you spend any time in China, you will see flavors and experiences that you just don't see in the United States. I had a latte when I was over in China. It was a rose dew latte. And literally what they were doing is they were steaming and seeping rose petals to get the fragrance into the syrup.
Where are my rose petals, Brian?
Well, next time. But you know, that creativity is really exciting to like a dark chocolate latte. So I think, you know, product innovation is one of those things that I think your competitors always make you better. And that's a great example of, you know what, we've got a competitor that has been innovating at a torrid pace. We got to figure out how we can innovate correctly as well.
All right, we're at time, but do you have a secret to share about any future menu items?
Well, I will tell you, and this probably isn't all that secretive, but we are coming out with protein cold foam.
Oh, come on, that's not a secret.
In like just a couple
15 grams of protein, you pour it on top, it's gonna sell a lot.
It's going to do really well. And the other thing I'll tell you too is we are going to be reimagining all of our baked items. You know, I think there's a real opportunity for us to be much more artisanal, and I think it will complement our beverages. I do believe our food needs to match the craft of our coffee, and I think there's a real opportunity for us to elevate and be much more artisanal in what you experience out of our bake case. And then ultimately, even with our food, I mean, the reality is, you can't get past people talking about protein. You know, I keep thinking it's peaked, and I've been proven wrong. And so you're going to see us figure out how we can combine more protein with gluten-free options, and I think you're going to see a nice improvement on the food side of things.
So even more protein.
Even more protein. Yes, exactly.
Thanks. Brian, this conversation was fantastic. The audience was wonderful. We got to go protein load.
Yeah, there you go.
Go buff up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.